Okay, remember that they're changing my voice. This video is about the final defeat of humanity, especially the colonial groups, especially the racist white Jew and LGBT groups, aka the final victory of Horus, Jesus, the true Son of God, God who is the center of universal pinpoint and moral precision. Now, these people kind of confuse things, right? When they say Jesus, they tend to refer to some very false idea. When they say Horus, they refer to some false idea, fairy and otherwise. Both these ideas, in their true form, are the true Son of God, the top martial artist ever possible. I've given these people many days to respond to my arguments, the churches, you name it. And many of their workers are watching me. They know the significance of my argument, my challenge. They failed because I'm mentally superior to them, morally, mentally, spiritually, romantically, you name it. And I said, if the top martial artist ever possible isn't the Son of God, then who is he? And there, you could hear a church mouse, right? You could hear a frickin' church mouse because they're so quiet. As the story goes, you could hear a pin drop. Point number 1. All these points are based in logic and evidence, not mere, and I do mean mere, white, Jewish, and LGBT supremacist conceptions of things. Okay, this is the truth here. Not their fairy game because, they refuse to man up. But the truth because I am manning up, and I've manned up my whole life. I was far more of a man than the manliest one of them is right now when I was a child. And I just became more masculine since then. Point number 2. The types of people who think an inferior type is superior are the types of people that are like animals and Simpsons, and their opinions do not truly matter. Obviously, Joe Rogan types, okay, Harry and William types, Harry Potter and someone who's like his, curly-haired twin brother who tries to act tough, tries to act like an authoritative magician or something on top of that, or sage, or slave master, or some immature idea like that. They are clearly all inferior to the Royal African Falcon top martial artist. And even if they had a zillion lives each, those lives wouldn't be worth a moment in my shoes. Because righteousness is greater than being some kind of worm playing a game because he doesn't have a drop of decency or worth in his genes. I am superior to all. God set me apart as superior to all. That was God's judgment. God is honest. People who say otherwise are low down, dirty, no good liars, unrepentant scum. Almost anybody and everybody, when they're younger, they might tell a little lie here and there. Whereas these are the type of scumbags who lie all their life, every generation, and pass on those despicable, childish, fairy game lies to their offspring. What does that tell you? I historically struck at unbeatable world record speed in the spirit of true righteousness. And obviously, I am heterosexual. Point number 3. God must be one's first consideration. So I first consider what pleases God. Then I consider what God expects from His Son, the King of Kings. Everything from God's minimal expectations for me to what would truly make Him proud. I must also consider doing myself justice, and I must consider what I want. This is obviously true because I am Christ and the only one obeying God. So to do God and the righteous justice, I must consider doing God and myself justice. Point number 4. Part of honoring God includes explaining what true blessings are and aren't. This may offend people that are committed to evil, especially when they're committed to racism and false pride to varying degrees. You see, as black people are so cheated, it should be very obvious and very easy to point this out. It should be very obvious and should be very obviously easy, rather, to point this out. And they made it so I'm kind of having trouble articulating myself, but I'm sure that you understand what I mean. You know, it's the difference between some kind of worm who's not sabotaged, who articulates himself with no problem, and the top martial artists ever who they're sabotaging because they're worms. If you were a true woman of worth, who would you prefer? Some bitch-made punk that sabotages the top martial artist ever out of jealousy for his English crest or something, for his Jewish social club? I mean, what the fuck? Some racist gay guy from San Francisco? Who would you prefer? Come on, this is not hard here. Think. Okay. So as black people are so cheated, it should be very easy to point this out, and they try to make it difficult. I am blessed by God more than anyone who ever lived, and anyone who will ever live, as I am the top martial artist ever possible. How many mythologies about ideas of people who, are trying to kind of deify themselves, trying to make themselves seem like a great warrior in single combat. Right? Hector and Achilles. Hercules versus, his enemies. David and Goliath. Samson and the Philistines. Benaiah. Countless stories have a kind of single combat or warrior theme. But in reality, not the Asians, the Jews, the whites, not Native Americans, not other black people, not Arabs, not islanders, not any other person. Chukwuemeka, me, I'm the top martial artist ever possible. And if that bothers you, then be bothered. If your spirit is adverse, know it's being trampled right now. My spirit is greater. The spirit realm and God Almighty set me apart as the top martial artist ever. How you like that? I could die right now and my life is far greater than every other life on this planet put together. The top martial artist ever possible. Let that sink in. You jealous people who give the orders to these people to harass me, let that sink in. That's who you're up against, God and His Son. As you make the worst mistake ever, I hope you people are proud of yourselves. Okay. After me is my father, and then at some point we get Martin Luther King Jr. If, what I believe about him is true, that is. And that means, I'm talking about people in American history here, but it's true for the whole world, and my father. But everyone else, it's just people in American history, points of references. So after me is my father, and then at some point we get Martin Luther King Jr., and then Michael Jordan, who was gifted with amazing physical prowess and a brain that formed his body a certain way and allowed him to do these things. Okay, and these things made him a great and awesome athlete. Though he turned his back on God, and I do not respect that at all. But I consider every known white, Jewish, and LGBT person. I point this out because of the extreme racism that they've aimed at me on behalf of their groups. I consider every white, Jewish, and LGBT person to have turned their backs on have turned their backs on God, except for my mother, who married my father on earth. Therefore, I consider that Michael Jordan goes beyond them. in terms of being blessed by God. I consider the Bible to just be another book that is written by people that seek to unfairly elevate themselves and to superimpose themselves on the Royal African Falcon top martial arts order, but they do seem to have coded it into the book that God's order is actually a Royal African Falcon, martial art order. Obviously, this comes from black people, it comes from God through black people, what have you. Okay. Okay, so what religious Jew or white or Jewish Christian that is alive right now had a more blessed life than Michael Jordan? They have not done anything holy, and their collective guilt is said to be extreme by many of them. So many white people admit that their collective guilt is extreme. Now, do I say this, out of some kind of arrogance? No. Leads me to my next point. Point number 5. I'm not interested in the racial politics of the world, just the truth. I am not a black supremacist. I'm a moral supremacist. Point number 6. Think about a concentration camp, right? If there was a good Nazi, if there was somebody using good Nazi psychology and bad Nazi psychology, right? Good cop, bad cop. Okay. And they were saying to a Jewish person in the camp, that they'll do what they can. Well, still following the Nazis. They'll throw them a little bone. Have they separated themselves from collective guilt? No. This is part of why, when the Nazis were punished after World War II, the German people were punished, it was collectively. They weren't seen as having individuals that separated themselves from collective guilt. This is why when, Donald Trump is going to put tariffs on countries, it's that country collectively. He holds every man, woman, and child in that country guilty and accountable to some degree for whatever injustice he perceives, whatever economic injustice he perceives to have happened, whatever social injustice, including fentanyl. So he punishes them collectively. And as they form together to make a nation and they fail to separate themselves from that collective guilt, they are guilty as part of the collective, but also according to their individual deeds. It's important to note to understand why I'm right to say this. Because they cause me, I'm mulatto, I'm not white. Okay, they cause me to slip on my words here using technology, and they think that it is smart and cute and funny, and it's stupid. Okay, now let's consider this, this occultist Manly P. Hall. He kind of looks like Aleister Crowley. Let's say Aleister Crowley, if you dated this famous Hispanic singer named Selena, who was pretty attractive, if I remember correctly. Okay, and we see them walking around, and they argue, Manly P. Hall or Aleister Crowley or some occultist like that, some creepy guy in a suit, like we see these days so often. You see these social clubs, right? A lot of them are these racist crypto Jews, and people rolling with them who feel bad and they're towed along, but then they're cultivating that satanic evil. And there's crypto British and or English and LGBT and Greek societies, a lot of these Greek guys as well, Greek cult people. And they're arguing that because they're more accepted by society, because they have this attractive female, that they think that they're more important and that they should be playing a kind of occult magic card game of trying to tell people what to do. They look dumber than hell. Look dumber than hell than some guy who works out all the time, right? Who thinks that he's a greater warrior than the top martial artist ever, or that he should be seen as above. What a fucking disgrace. Some of these guys are in prison, some of these guys are bodybuilders. They all look dumber than shit if they were to make that exact argument. It's like, you think about the movie Black Panther. You think some guy in prison could outmaneuver the real life version of that superimposed? No. He'd outmaneuver him and cut his head off. Done. Gut him. Done. You think some bodybuilder, some military special forces? No. You fucking kidding me? You're more likely to see, a golden retriever that works out all the time beat a fucking leopard. I mean, give me a fucking break. There's a natural order. And as you people question it, you deserve to be humiliated like it says in the Bible. Do not elevate yourself before a king. Okay? Or he's going to embarrass you and your fucking everyone like you. Use your fucking head. I got to explain this. Point number 8. Those of you who've seen the TV show Sabrina the Teenage Witch, a lot of these females out here who co-sign with them, to be fair, some of them are been somewhat diplomatic with everything considered, but not truly diplomatic because they worship the devil and they're harassing me in these groups. But they're not every female out there, not every Jewish female or white female or token minority or thug or whoever, regular person is a gang stalker or whatever you want to call it. Not every one of them is a complete bitch, right? But there's a difference, like I said many times, between being righteous and being nice. The word sin, S-I-N, spelled backwards is N-I-S. And N-I-S is the same sound as N-I-C-E. So there's a difference between being nice and being righteous. So if you have Sabrina the Teenage Witch, who was a pretty nice person, but she started acting like a bitch in a very clear-cut way. And she started saying, oh, this guy's a goy, and she started making a sarcastic face and laughing with her family members in the TV show. Okay? And she says, yeah, she says, do this. No. He can listen. And she says bitch-ass shit like that. Would you respect her more than the top martial artist ever? No. And how much more when the top martial artist ever fully intends to die for what he believes, while she intends to be a conformist, fucking coward, groupie, clueless, gold-digging witch of a bitch who never learned the story. They never learned the morals of the stories, of the cartoons. They never passed that point. Probably the moral of Snow White, Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty is don't be a fucking witch. It's immature as fucking shit. It's some childish, evil bitch shit. And she did not learn that. So how could you respect her? Or the guy who has kids with her? Or the guy who's dumb enough to marry her? Or parents who raised her? What a disgrace. And embracing that disgrace just makes it worse. Point number 9. Okay, so I already brought up this already. I brought up how these people are comparing the Jewish people to the kind of little skinny animal that was on Jabba the Hutt's lap, who would laugh along with him. Okay, do I think it's entirely fair? No. Do I think it's somewhat fair because I'm being harassed by these people? I'll let you decide. I don't want to break the rules on YouTube on this video. I'm trying hard not to. When everyone involved deserves to be called names and they deserve to be threatened and on and on and on. But we live in a society that doesn't believe in justice. They believe in lying. They believe in just ice and being in a state of mind where you have fake liberty. You're free, in their mind, the way they do things is that you're free to do whatever they tell you to do. Basically, subtly and otherwise. I mean, it's very immature. People who don't respect the concept of freedom within reason, within the boundaries of righteousness and justice. They're not really human. They're inhuman. That's inhuman to not respect freedom to the point where you give it when it's fair. And their scales are broken as it gets, and the Lord detests dishonest scales. Number 10. If you look at the people of the world carefully, and keep in mind, I'm not some jerk here. I'm telling you how it is. If you think I'm a jerk and you're way out of touch, you don't understand what's going on. If you think I'm a jerk and that's all there is to it or something, no, I'm not a jerk. Nobody is more loving and caring and kind than I am. These people have betrayed God and I to the extreme, and I fully expect to die any day now as a result of that betrayal. Put yourself in my shoes, you'll see that it's fair. If you look at people carefully, they can be held accountable for the vast majority of people, right? Besides someone who has extreme autism, someone's extremely retarded or some Down syndrome, these types of people. What have you. But if you look at people very carefully, you see a certain mental blindness, a certain madness. And again, I'm not making fun. I'm the son of 2 doctors. You think I go around making fun of people who have some kind of handicap? That's sick. That's stupid. That's retarded. That's something that Seth and them would do, not something Horus or Jesus, who are basically the same. That's the same idea in their pure form would do. That is something that a devil would do, an immature worm. But there's something wrong with them. And that's part of why we would never believe that they're ideal, because it's translated into generational evil over many years. Now, I know that they've invented things over the years. Some of those things are medicines. Some of the work that they've done collectively are perhaps best described as good works. Some of these people were more selfless than others. Some white Jewish people are very kind people. Minus the fact that they're not righteous. They're not doing God's work. So, it's kind in that sense. Not truly kind. But they're pleasant to be around, what have you. I'm not racist. I don't believe that your race historically determines whether you have worth or not. That is sicker than hell. I'm part black, part white, part Jewish to some degree. But it doesn't express itself anywhere near as much as they try to make it seem in my videos. You couldn't tell I was part Jewish historically. They make it so I look like, some kind of Jewish guy in the church or something, or some kind of Jewish nerd or what have you. Very sad that they chose to do that. You see, this might very well be my last video ever. So I must explain a bit. Why did it come to this? Why do they hate their family so much, like Cronus eating the flesh of their children symbolically? Why did they eat the worth of their offspring? Okay, I do not know the precise answer to that question, and no one I've come across has been able to explain it to me, and no one I've come across seems like the type of person that would know the answer to that, including the craziest of them. Come across one way or another, So what has happened here is unbelievable to some degree, but it's entirely believable, and it must be true, and people would believe it when they hear it. How often do you come across someone who insists that people tell the truth, that the ideal person not only is black, but is a specific type of black person that other black people refuse to give credit to, which is the top martial arts ever possible? Black patriarchal line, mulatto. Not even one race. How often do you hear people tell the truth about this? It just doesn't happen. Already, I'm above everyone else. I've told them the truth about what matters most, and I insist on it. And I have some privileged position that allows me to kind of have the knowledge I need to make this argument. It goes without saying, as you look around, who do you think's ideal? Go beyond Bob Marley and Barack Obama. And again, I don't care about race. I was engaged to a white female. I've been in love with a Jewish female, an Asian female, a Hispanic female, you name it, Islander, you name it. Okay? At one point I thought that, Semitic women, Arab specifically, if I remember correctly, at one point I believed that they were like the hottest chicks ever. And at one point I had a crush on IDF soldiers, this, that, and the other thing. So I could have had a wife of any race you can imagine. Okay, the inhabitants of the earth, they turn their backs on God and I. And I know you people are being conditioned to just mind your own business, quote unquote, even though it's not really minding your own business. Doing God's work is what's supposed to be your business. They betrayed God and I. Okay? And that is key in what will eventually kill my flesh. When my flesh dies, it's because the inhabitants of the earth were led by the governing class, these white Jew and LGBT groups, these families, these clubs and secret societies, cults, corporate groups, what have you. They're led by these political groups, what have you. Guilds is what they used to call something back in the day. They're led by these secret brotherhoods and sisterhoods. They're led by these groups of people who didn't want me to show them up, I'm told. But even though I live in unincorporated Morgan Hill, most of you don't know where that is. Hell, most of the elite probably don't know where that is. But yet they didn't want me to look good, even though I'm God's son. They didn't want me to have my own place. They didn't want me to have a wife. And again, I accept the obstacle course. That is what God allows to happen to me. I respect God's judgment, but I don't respect the inhabitants of the earth for their bitch-made punk fucking namby-pamby sissy bitch-made pushover fucking judgment while their tail tucked refusing to be a man. Why should I? These are the type of people that drive people to suicide and say, well, I guess he couldn't hack it. You bitch-ass motherfuckers, you are the most weak-willed people that ever lived. And people, Samson committed suicide, and in a sense, Jesus and Stephen the Martyr and John the Baptist. Your scales are so fucking pathetic. And now, as Stephen the Martyr would say, as all the prophets in the story would say, the real idea is that they're superimposed on. Now the righteous one has come back, and you've screened him out, just like Herod and Caiaphas and Pilate, think that you won something? How did you win? What hope is there for you and your offspring? Life is short. How long before you meet your maker in fucking disgrace? How the fuck do you think that you won? How do you figure? And this whole time, I've been breaking it down to you, alluding to future events, and you have no counter argument. I won. You lost. All of your families know it. Your offspring will know it. They'll tremble at the thought that they're related to the worms who screened out Jesus out of the sheer pathetic animosity, out of heterophobia, out of white supremacy, out of Zionism, Jewish supremacy, you name it. They will hate the people that screened me out, who gave the order. They'll hate the people who are rich in this time, who had the power to scramble and rally to me and seek justice for me and everyone else who's a victim of psyops. That is what you're sowing. And I don't see any sign that you people are going to do the right thing. There's little hints here and there, but it's very doubtful. After my flesh dies one way or another, no one will be right with God. No one will be authorized by God to continue my work. The closest thing to it is blowing up the whole world, making sure every person is dead. Because the offspring of the inhabitants of the earth have built their bodies and their families and their groups on injustice, ill-gotten gain, bloodshed, on screening out the righteous. You think they should be redeemed after that? For thousands and thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of 300,000 years on this planet? Forging complete demons that screen out the Son of God, the most righteous person ever? You think they should be allowed to be redeemed? Or their offspring? You think it should be forgotten after 100 generations? No! Your failure will never be wiped away. And I will always testify with all my soul and all my spirit against you people, against the inhabitants of the earth and their offspring, because that's justice. Even if you were a zillion times more kind seeming than you are, I would still do justice.